Good afternoon and welcome to On the Spot Motorsports Media. Tonight, we will be joined by Chase Van Sant, uh, the new rookie that has joined the Pro Stock Motorcycle ranks. But before we bring him on, we would like to talk a little bit about the sponsors that make everything happen. Our first one is going to be Miracle Automotive and Towing in Stark. Hey, if you're having automotive problems or you're on the side of the road, you don't have to pray for a miracle. Just call Miracle at 904 368 1114. Also, on the spot lawn maintenance. That's right, it's that time of year. It's starting to rain and the grass is starting to grow. So, if you need them to come out and give you an estimate for your yard or have them to come on out and mow your lawn, give them a call at 904 966 1633. We also want to thank Team GRE. That's right, Goolsby Racing Enterprises, located in Gainesville. Hey, they can take care of all your needs of wrapping your race cars to doing banners, posters, signs. Even if you need your numbers for your race car, you can give them a call at 352 870 7258. Again, we're going to bring Mr. Chase Van Sant in.
Mitchell,
How's it
thanks for
going,
having
Chase?
me.
Glad to have you here tonight with On the Spot Motorsports Media.
Yeah, thank you a bunch. Appreciate it.
Well, one of the things that we always like to do, we always like our guests to kind of introduce themselves to the viewers.
Yeah, so name's Chase Van Sant. I'm from Pella, Iowa. 25 years old, and lucky enough to get to ride one of Jerry Savoy's White Alligator Racing Pro Stock bikes. So kind of grew up in Iowa, been a bracket racer for a long time, and always dreamed of running Pro Stock. And so to get this chance and to run with this team has been awesome. We're only one race into the season, but so far it's been looking good, and I've been having a blast.
And you talking about the season, that big gap from you race at Gainesville to you're able to get back out to actually y'all go to ZMAX in the Carolinas for the Circle K 4 Wide Nationals. How do you try to keep those great reactions times that you had at Gainesville going for you during during these off weeks?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that's it's difficult to do because the reaction times for me, that's a very that's something I try and let my subconscious brain kind of control, and I really try not to be thinking too much when I roll up, into the staging beams. And so, as crazy as it sounds, I try not to think about that as much. What we did in Gainesville, especially on the reaction times, was really good. And so for me, I try not to overthink that part of it. I try and stay sharp in some other ways, do some exercises, things like that, and just keep up on myself physically. But as far as trying to keep up, I really, as far as reaction times go, try and really not to think about it much, because I trust my ability to do that, and I'm confident in my ability. So I try not to overthink that part as much as possible, but it is difficult.
Well, before we get into some of your racing on Pro Stock Motorcycle, didn't you participate in the junior dragster program?
Yeah. I started racing juniors when I was 9 or 10 years old, and did a lot of stuff locally at my home track in Eddyville, Iowa. It's just 25 minutes down the road or so. So, did a lot of that. We traveled every once in a while to go to the Western Conference Finals when they had them in Vandermeer. And that was always a great time, and did some more local stuff like that. But yeah, we were able to race quite a bit of juniors, and I raced up until I was 16 or 17. And when I was 16, I started on a bone stock Hayabusa, just trying to get some laps and stuff like that in. And then kind of did both on the junior and the street bike a little bit, just to try and ease my way out of it, but yet work into something new.
Well, I know you just mentioned Vandermeer Speedway, and actually last week we actually had Tammy Vandermeer on. talking about their 65th anniversary that is coming up. And I tell you what, that's going to be a great national event there, being their 65th year. Uh, but now your dad raced in AMA Pro Star class, correct?
Yeah, yep, that's right. Yeah,
So
he raced.
you're a second generation racer on motorcycle.
Yeah. So he raced. Actually, he started the year I was born, so 1997 he started, and he raced up until about 2001 or so. So I was really young when I was at the track, and I remember a little bit. I remember his last race, pro mod race that is, at Brainerd, and then he rode the bike at some other events and stuff like that. But kind of the last of his full, kind of full time racing with them, I do remember that. And so I was at the racetrack at a really young age. I think I was 3 weeks or a month or something like that when I was my very first racetrack. I think was Indy. So it's always been cool. It's always kind of been in my blood, I guess, and it's just stuck ever since. And I just remember, sitting at home watching all the VHS tapes of my dad racing and seeing all these names and stuff like that. And it was just something that I always wanted to do. And so obviously growing up, Pro Stock Motorcycle was the thing that was on TV. And so watching those guys, that's kind of always what you strive to be, was the highest level in whatever you're doing. And for motorcycles, that's Pro Stock Motorcycle. So for me to be here now is such a surreal, it's such a weird feeling. But it's really gratifying to kind of remember where you started in junior dragsters and what you rode, what your very first motorcycle you rode was up until now. And, it seems like time has really flown by, but it's really cool to look back and see some of that stuff.
Now, you was also an athlete. You actually was a sprinter in NCAA and went to college at was it Northeastern Illinois, Iowa?
Yeah, Northern Iowa University. Yep.
Northern Iowa. Yeah.
Yep. So in high school, I did track and played football, stuff like that. I was really, I'm not the biggest guy at all, so football I wasn't necessarily the greatest at, but was always really quick. And I was a long jumper in college. That was my primary event. So kind of the opportunity came around my senior year, really, to go and do this at the Division I level. And the thing about athletics like that is it's not like racing where you can kind of come back to it after. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to do that and compete at that level, because you have to be in college, obviously, and you have to be fresh out of high school. So that was actually, it was a tougher decision, I think, than some people realize, just because I did want to race and I had goals in drag racing. But this opportunity was too good to pass up, to compete at that level and be compete against some of the best in the NCAA. And so I went and did that for 4 years. And it was a really valuable experience for me, because long jump and drag racing, I think, has more in common than people realize. You have a break in between your time when you're jumping or when you're racing or whatever, and then you have a very short window to actually perform, whatever it is you're doing. Whether it's drag racing, you have hopefully 6 seconds to get down the track very quickly, and in long jump, it's roughly the same by the time you step onto the runway and make your jump. And so I think that did more for me mentally than I ever realized at the time, because you do compete on some fairly big stages in the NCAA, and you compete against these really big names. And so for me, it was a huge help mentally, and I still use some of those lessons that I learned when I was long jumping, now in Pro Stock Motorcycle.
Right. And I tell you, I believe, being a runner, it is a mental type deal to be a sprinter, be a long distance runner. You actually have to train your brain just about as much as you have to train your body. I actually had the opportunity. I ran in high school. I was a sprinter and long jumped and triple jumped, and was actually a decathlete. Was able to do the decathlon 3 years in a row, and yeah, I think it's actually helped me along the way with racing and other things in life. And I tell you, we get a lot of racers on here that's actually ran track and cross country or another form of athletics along that. And I think that helps you prepare you mentally. Um, so you also, I see that you run a lot in the Man Cup races.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. We started racing 460 actually because my dad's old pro mod bike, or the bike that he used to run in pro mod, um, that was basically what they were running in pro mod back then, to the 8th mile at least. They ran quarter mile when my dad was racing, but really we basically got his old bike ready with almost everything on it identical to as it was, down to the ignition controller was the same thing, and the motor was the same thing. We went through it and freshened it up, but we were really able to adapt that bike to 460 without really any hassle or issues. And so it seemed like a really natural step for us, and to get me going a little bit quicker on a wheelie bar bike, that was a big step. And so the whole experience with 460 and racing in the Man Cup and stuff like that was so valuable to me for pro stock, just because you do get a lot of experience, and while they're still very, very different, you have to be extremely comfortable on the motorcycle, because the car guys would say like 460 in the 8th mile isn't a huge deal. If you're running a big dragster or something like that, 460 is it's not super fast for those guys do that all weekend long. On a motorcycle, it's a little bit different of a deal. And so when you're exposed to the wind and things like that, looking over at the 8th mile mark is a little bit challenging. And so you really have to mentally slow the whole run down, and be comfortable on the bike at that point. Otherwise, it gets really hard to judge the stripe. And so racing 460 was a really good step, I think, stepping stone for me into pro stock, just because I was comfortable going fairly quick. Obviously pro stock is a little bit faster than that, but it still gives you it's another way to become comfortable on a motorcycle that has wheelie bars, and the way it steers and feels and everything like that is I think super valuable to me.
Right. And you had some really good success running in 460. How many wins do you have
Man, I don't
in
know.
that class?
That's a tough question. 2020, I had a really good year. I think I won 4 or 5 races in 2020, and won the big Man Cup World Finals, and so that was a really good year for me. And even in 2021 and last year, I had a few, and so it was good to rack that up, because that class is getting to the point where, man, I mean, if you're worse than 20 on the tree, you might just pack your stuff up and head home. I mean, those guys, they've got it down pat so good that you just have to be on it all the time. And obviously the bracket racing, and anywhere you go in the country, your reaction time is huge, because it just helps you on the big end. So I think the bracket racing has helped me out a lot in pro stock so far, because I do stress the reaction time a lot, and that's super important to me, because that's one of my jobs. So
Right.
and it all stemmed from having to do that in 460, because some of these bikes with the ECUs that are coming out now, I mean, they can run 460 like just they can print tickets doing it. It's automatic for them. So for me, I knew it. We have a shorter wheelbase bike. It's not always as consistent as some of the others. So I knew if I could get them on the tree, then maybe I could have a little bit of playing room on the big end. So that was something that I've always tried to be really good at and stress to myself, is just it's only going to help you down track. So
Right.
and a lot of that goes credit to the 460 guys because they made it incredibly tough on me for a long time.
Well, to me, Pro Stock Motorcycle's one of those classes that, you just can't go out there and jump on a bike and do. You have to take those steps. Start out bracket racing and then slowly move up through the ranks to get there. Because if you just decide that, hey, I think I can jump on one of these monsters and go down the track, you're more than likely you're going to get hurt or killed doing it. It's a lot of mental things, and you got to be in physically good shape as well. You got to be able to tuck that body as soon as you go to leave the line. You got to be able to shift and move your weight around while you're going down the track, and you can't go too much because if you do, then you're going to hit the oil pan up underneath the bike. You're going to tear up the bike, and that's going to throw you off. And I tell you, it's not an easy class. It's very hard, and unfortunately, when people are sitting in the stands, y'all just make it look so easy.
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, is to make it look easy, because when it looks easy, you're going fast. And I mean, yeah, you're spot on. It's a different animal, and the motorcycles themselves are different from anything that I've ever ridden, just because they are shorter wheelbase, and the wheelie bars are shorter, so they hit harder, and you definitely feel that. And they are a little bit more finicky, and you really have to, a lot of the pro stock guys use the word finesse, and it's true. It takes a lot of finesse, because you can upset them very quickly, and that just scrubs ET. So, it's a difficult thing when you think about, your crew guys and the crew chief. They go through all of this work. They're working really, really long days and long nights, and your job is to not oversteer and not overcorrect, and just try and be as perfect as you possibly can. And that gets tricky when you only have a very, very short amount of time to do it. So, yeah, if it looks easy on TV, that's good, because that means I'm doing my job. So.
Now, can you tell us a little bit, how did the opportunity come around for you to move up to the NHRA and actually race for White Alligator team?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story, because the opportunity came up with it came up. My dad actually kind of introduced himself to Tim Kalungian, who's the crew chief at PRI, and I think it was on Thursday or something like that. And I wasn't even actually at PRI yet. I was going to come Friday and Saturday. And I think Thursday, a lot of the racing guys kind of came by the Trick Tools booth. And so my dad kind of stopped Tim and introduced himself. And I think they may have talked before, but, he said, hey, my son and I, we've been looking, to get into Pro Stock Motorcycle for a while, and curious how we go about that. And Tim's like, well, maybe you should give me a call in a couple of weeks, when you're back from the show and we're back at the shop and stuff like that. And so basically they kind of started talking without me ever meeting Tim or anything, even talking to him. And they kind of worked out a deal where Trick Tools was going to sponsor Jerry for the 2022 season. And then I was going to get my license throughout the year as well. So my first time actually going to the White Alligator shop and meeting Tim was in March of 2022, after this whole deal had been organized and everything. So I showed up at the shop and sat on the bike and stuff like that, and then kind of started my licensing process in Virginia. But in the meantime, when we were at the shop, Tim was like, hey, we have basically one guy for each motorcycle. So Karen has one and Jerry had one. He's like, usually we have a floater that kind of works on both motorcycles. And I'm like, I work on my own bikes. I enjoy it. It's something I love to do. I would do it, no problem. I'd love to go get some experience. And I think it'd be good for me to see a little bit of the NHRA, if this is my final goal. And so I ended up traveling with them for quite a bit of the season, and just working for Jerry and Karen and Tim, and working on the motorcycles. And so I think that actually has helped me a lot here. But just to get familiar with them and familiar with how an NHRA event is run, kind of from the racer's perspective. But yeah, it's kind of funny how it all worked out, because it's like, I never even ended up meeting Tim until I showed up at his shop one day, and then next thing you know, I'm kind of working for him and going the whole season, helping him out and doing what I can and learning and soaking it all in. And yeah, and then it just turns out into the next year, Karen obviously is retired, and my teammate John Hall got that ride, which has been awesome. And Jerry kind of wanted to take a step back from all the travel, and so we were just kind of in the right place at the right time, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, both Karen and Stouffer and Jerry Savoy, two great people. Seeing get nationals ready with Y'all's Pit as well, and I guess he was helping out, or and you're surrounded by good people. Um, have they been, sure they've been really good mentors to you during the switch over and stuff. What kind of things have they actually helped you with?
Jerry was at my test session. Actually, Jerry and Karen were at my test session in Vegas when I finished up my license. And they were both super helpful. And even to that aspect, Freddie Camarena was also there, and he's kind of been helpful to the war team in some ways, and we've kind of helped them out in some ways. And I think the biggest thing that they've all kind of helped me with is just the mental side of things. I was extremely nervous, ending my license and getting on these bikes the first time. And I think a lot of that was just because I had very high expectations for myself. And it wasn't anything external that they were putting on me or anything like that. They just told me, go have fun, ride the motorcycle and stuff like that. But, for me, it was much bigger than that. I wanted to get on the motorcycle and do, as good as I possibly could, and hopefully end up with a ride out of it. And so they all helped me out a lot with just the mental side of things and calming my nerves and stuff like that. And just getting on the bike, we've kind of bounced some things off of each other as far as, learning how to move our weight on the motorcycle and things like that. Everyone rides a little bit different. Obviously, Karen and Jerry have very different riding styles. But it is interesting to hear what they all have to say about it, because they all have kind of different reasons for what they do. And so it's nice to hear that from each of them. And, like I said, I think the mental side of things is where they've helped me out the most. They've been super calming, and at no point have I ever felt any pressure from them. It's just I feel like they've only wanted the best for me, and that's a good feeling, right. Especially going into this, you have some big shoes to fill, because Karen has the national record. She is lights out on the tree. Jerry's a past champion, and so it's like, man, I really got to do good here. I mean, that's kind of what you're mentally telling yourself. And they've all been really good at just like, hey, go out and learn, go have fun, and you're racing pro stock motorcycle. Like, that's pretty cool. Just go have fun with it. And so to hear them say that, it really means a lot, because those are the people that you're trying to impress and you're trying to, get their approval from. But it's not like that at all. They're super encouraging and super helpful.
Well, it just sounds like they're saying, go out there, do your best, have fun, everything will fall in place. And I tell you what, would you making your debut at a Gainesville at this past Gator Nationals, man, what a great debut for you. You qualified number 3. I think it was with a 6.4, I think it was, at 200.8 miles an hour to put you in that spot. After qualifying, how did you feel knowing that, hey, I'm in the show, I'm in the top half of the field, I got a really good chance of going a couple of rounds here? How did that make you feel?
It was Friday night was a really crazy feeling for me, because I really tried to come into the Gator Nationals with no real expectations. I didn't know how I would do, how I would react, and I also, didn't know how the bike was gonna do compared to the field. The Gator Nationals is always interesting because you see, and I mean, no one knows what went on other teams in the off season, and so you just never really know where you're gonna stand, and so. For me to end Friday night number 2 and only a thou behind Steve, things kind of started to set in, and I was like, wow, Steve is a guy that I've looked up to since for as long as I can remember. He's been in the class for as long as I can remember, and then to see my name right below his, and then a whole list of other names that I've looked up to for a really long time, below me, that was a very, very surreal feeling. And I was trying to not put pressure on myself, knowing that I had a motorcycle that was very fast, and I just tried to use it as confidence because I believe in my ability on the tree, and I believe in the team and Tim and their ability to tune it and do everything well. And so I just tried to use that kind of energy and excitement going into Saturday, and just like, this is better than I kind of subconsciously expected. And we're in a really good spot. I don't think many people probably expected me to be in that scenario, especially after Friday night. And so I just kind of used that momentum throughout the weekend. But it was very, very surreal for me to look at my name amongst, some of the others that I've looked up to. It was a very, very weird feeling, but it was good. It was very, very good.
It felt really rewarding, to have those that you look up to, being right above you or right below you. You're in the thick of it, getting ready to go into round 1 on Saturday, which you had to face Richard Gladson, which ended up having an issue with his motorcycle, giving you a competition bye in the first round. And I tell you what, you sure didn't relax on the tree whatsoever. Want to say you had was it a 023 light, I think, against him. It might have been a little better, but somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think it was.
And I think it was somewhere right around there. And that made you, helped you just go right on into round 2, where you had to face Ryan, a very good pro stock motorcycle rider. You was able to put a 011 light down there on your reaction time, running a 679 with a 5 at 198.58 miles an hour to Yale's 691.5 at 195.70. So as you're going these rounds, do you feel like it was building a lot of confidence for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the whole weekend was just a weekend of firsts. My first NHRA race, and then you roll into Q1, and it's like, this is it. This is your first appearance on the kind of the big stage, I guess. And so, and then Saturday was a little bit more relaxed, just because it's another day of qualifying, and you're kind of doing the same thing as you did the day before. But rolling into Sunday, that's your first race day, and so now it's like, you kind of got the butterflies in your stomach, because this is where it really matters. And there's just more intensity involved in race day naturally. And for me, it was one of those things that even though Richard broke, I was still very nervous for first round, knowing that, after when I rolled up into the burnout box, that I couldn't really lose, but then, second round kind of felt like first round. All those same kind of emotions and butterflies came back, and I I was pumped once we got done with that round, because my light had stayed very consistent with what it was all weekend, and that kind of just solidified the rest of the day for me. It kind of felt like, okay, I know I can do this. I've been doing it all weekend, and there's no reason to change anything now. Now I know I can roll into the burnout box and roll into the beams with the same mindset that I've had before. And and there's no real reason for extra nerves because I know I've been consistent and I know the bike's strong, and so it gave me a lot of momentum going in through even through the semis with Angie. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, you actually had a really good light there as well against Angie. Uh, I think it was the 022 light uh, with her. Unfortunately, on to the final round. Uh, but I think you've got a lot of momentum going your way to help you out. Coming up at the Circle K Four Wide Nationals, that is right around the corner, April the 28th through the 30th.
yeah.
And so, how do you get yourself mentally prepared for the chaos? I call it because it is actually really weird trying to watch your bike and four other bikes stage at the same time and try to be on cue for your, to have a great reaction time.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't really I don't have much of a game plan as of right now. Just because I've never seen four wide. I've never even been to a four wide race. So for me, I think it's just going to come down to not overthinking it when I roll up to the beams. It's the tree's still going to come down. You just have to remember what lane you're in and what bulb you're looking at. And I think if you can do that, and then you can kind of shut your brain off and just react instead of thinking about having three other bikes next to you. I think that's going to help a lot, and it's going to make it an extra challenge just because it's something that I've never done, and I know it's not going to be as easy as I just stated, but I think the major thing will be not overthinking it and just not trying to kind of zone that out. It's always creates chaos on the starting line. You always see people leaving before. Wacky stuff just tends to happen on four wides, and so trying to just prepare the same way I have in the past or the same way I did for the Gators, and just come in feeling confident and knowing that I can do it. Who's ever in the lane next to me, or however many bikes there are in the lane next to me. And yeah, I guess we're gonna find out. It's kind of one of those things that it's a little bit difficult to prepare for something I've never done and something I'm not familiar with. But I think just kind of staying calm and cool and collected is going to be the ticket.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to go in there and just focus on yourself and not worry about anybody else. And as long as you do your job, everything's going to turn out great for you. But yeah, there's been some wacky races there. I think it was last year in a pro mod class. You have one pro mod go forward and back up in the beams, and then when he backed up and got back in, another pro mod took off. I mean, it was kind of wild and comical at the same time. But yeah, I think as long as you focus on yourself, I think you'll do great. I
Yeah,
think you will.
yeah, certainly hope so.
What is it like having John Hall as a teammate?
Man, John's awesome. He's I haven't known John very long. I actually kind of the first time I met him was last November at the Man Cup race, and I've had a blast every time I'm around him. He's a funny dude, and he's very relaxed. He's not one that gets super amped up or anything. And it seemed like each day we rolled up, whether it was the testing in Orlando or the race, we'd kind of show up and be like, "Hey man, how you feel?" And we kind of just talk about how he felt, if we were nervous or whatever. And John was a very, very good at if I told him I was feeling a little nervous or whatever, he was very, very good at just dumbing it down, and he's like, "You have no reason to be nervous. It's, something you've done. You've already made the runs, you know how to ride the motorcycle. So, it doesn't matter if there's a camera, right next to you or if there's people in the stands, you're still doing the same thing you were, on Monday when we were testing." But
Right.
I really enjoyed being around John just because he keeps it light and fun. And it's been really great getting to know him.
Well, I've known John ever since he raced for George Bryce back in the days. He's always had a great attitude about always very positive and upbeat. And I think that's a great thing to have in y'all's pit area. With you being a rookie this year and learning the ways, and he'll help you say, hey, it's you can relax, don't worry about it, it'll be okay. I think he'll be a great mentor for you as well.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about your sponsor,
Mhm.
uh, Trick Tools. Can you tell us a little bit about the company? I know you work there, and it's part of your family's business.
Yeah. Yeah. So Trick Tools is a company that my dad started, and really it started out of a love for drag racing. It was something he owned a body shop, at the time when he started his racing career, and really started Trick Tools to help fund his racing. And so, really started out with some tube benders and some other equipment that chassis people that are building chassis would use. So it's kind of cool because the whole birth of the company was based around racing. And fabricators that build these chassis and build equipment to go racing. And so um, it's kind of blossomed into, we own a few product lines now, and we do some own of our own manufacturing on some stuff. And yeah, it's super cool to be involved with because I've always admired my dad in the way that he did racing and ran this business and stuff like that. And so to get to go racing with him and work for him, and it's just a really cool feeling. And so I'm actually more on the manufacturing side right now. We between myself and a couple other guys, we build a couple of the product lines. And so I'm not as much on like the sales team or anything like that. I will travel to some trade shows, but I definitely kind of keep in my little corner, and I do some machining and welding and stuff like that. But yeah, yeah, Trick Tools is really a lot of the people that build chassis for fuel cars and stuff like that. They have probably heard of us because I think a lot of them have ordered tools from us. So it's an interesting dynamic in the way that we've been around a while and involved in racing for a while, but to actually be out there as a sponsor on a motorcycle and get out in front of fans is kind of new for us. And so I think that's really neat.
Well, and I'll tell you, the prices are very, very good, very competitive. I've looked at some of y'all's tools lines, and great. Look like they're really strong tools. From nibblers, cutters to like you said, everything that you need to build a chassis, y'all have it. You know. But I wanted to talk a little bit about get into that 460 class real quick, and I know we had mentioned earlier that there's a race coming up pretty soon out there in Iowa. I think that's what you was talking about. That's coming up,
Yeah.
and I wanted to let you talk a little bit about it. And if anybody's watching uh, now or later that wants to go out there to the track, it'd be a great opportunity to see some really great racing.
Yeah, yeah, and we've got we call it Motorcycle Mania. It's our motorcycle race that we have actually in August at Eddyville Raceway Park, which is my home track. And this will be the third year in a row running it. But it's something that we've kind of bounced the idea around with Broderick Jackson, the owner of Man Cup, and he's been super supportive of it. So it's not a Man Cup race, but that since that's kind of the crowd that we're in and have been involved with over the last year or so, that's kind of the crowd we see come up to it. But yeah, it's the dates are mid-August. I think last year it was August 13th, 14th, and 15th. So I can't remember what it would be this year, but yeah, it's a cool race in the way that we know Iowa is a long trip for a lot of motorcycle guys, but we do some testing on Friday, and then we have a race on Saturday, and then we have a totally separate race on Sunday. So, all the purse and the money is guaranteed for each day, and so it's neat in the way that we know people are making a long trip up to see us, and go to this race, so we want to give them as much racing as possible. And so that's why we went to the 2-day race. But yeah, it's a fun deal. Last year we did a golf outing on Friday morning before testing opened, and so good group of us went out and played golf on Friday morning, and then got to the track and started working on our motorcycles and went racing. So definitely a fun event. Not super, hasn't been super huge just because of the drive, I think, for a lot of people, but the guys that are there, it's really good competition. It's a lot of fun, and you know, there is a lot of good racing up here, and I think it's a good opportunity for motorcycle guys to see people that they haven't always seen, you know, because a lot of it's on the East Coast and down south, and
Right.
and there's different pods all around in Omaha and Kansas and stuff like that do come up. And so I think it's a really good opportunity for people to kind of meet each other. And you know, a lot of these people own different businesses, whether it's, you know, engine building or tuning or something like that. And I think it can be good for networking as well, because you're actually meeting a different group of people instead of just seeing them on Facebook.
Exactly. You know, one of the things I would like is, you know, once you get that information and get that flyer, they get the flyer made, please send it to me. I will post it on our Facebook page as well, to draw more and more interest there. You know, we need to continue getting people interested in drag racing, and fans to come out to these tracks so we can save them and not lose them. Uh, you know, I posted this week, you know, the sad story of Houston Raceway Park. You know, it's closing. So I definitely want to do that. But I want to thank you tonight for taking your time and coming on with us. And I really do appreciate it. And hopefully you get a win and we can get you back on and we can discuss it.
Yeah, no, thank you a bunch. I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, had a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I definitely will stay in contact with you, Chase. And again, thank you for joining us tonight. And I'm looking forward to your future. It looks very bright for you.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. You take care.
Yeah, thank you. You too.
And there goes Chase. Again, we want to thank him for coming on with us tonight to talk about his pro stock motorcycle career getting kicked off with a debut at Gainesville Raceway. We will be back here next Thursday night. We will have Phil Green joining us. He's a member of Racers for Christ. We're going to talk about that organization and everything that they do for racers, from national events all the way down to our ET bracket racing. Again, we appreciate y'all for joining us. We'll see you again next Thursday night.